Good morning, everybody. I wanted to make another video today about why people don't make it in Uruguay. Now, this is specific to Uruguay, but I'm sure there's a lot of things that I'll talk about that could just be general of why people don't make it when they move to another country, because moving to another country is really difficult. I know in the first video that I ever recorded, I talked about why you need a really good reason to move. Like, what is your why of moving? And if you don't have that and you don't know, or maybe you're just like, I'm just kind of bummed here, I'm kind of depressed, or I'm just over this, I'm just gonna go somewhere else, and you don't really have a solid reason, it's unlikely that you're going to make it. But outside of that, even if you have a good reason, there are some pitfalls or some things that happen that make it really difficult to make it in Uruguay. So I kind of made a list so I wouldn't forget, but the first thing is money. It's huge. You have to have money to live, you have to have money to eat, you have to have money to have a place to live, you have to have money to, if you have kids, send them to school. And something that people don't understand is that when you move and you don't have a great command of the language, it's really impossible to get a job in the local language if you don't speak it. And mostly all of the jobs in Uruguay are going to be in Spanish. And even if you do speak perfect Spanish, fluent Spanish, even Uruguayan Spanish, and you're not from there, you don't have the connections, you don't have the resources, you just don't have the network to easily find a job. And if you do find a job, the salary is really low. So we're just not used to being North Americans having a really low salary. We don't know how to survive on a low salary. So a lot of people come looking for jobs, they have skills, even if they have skills like building a house or repairing things, it's really difficult because people are going to pick their family or their friends or somebody that they know, and if you don't have that network, it's going to be really hard for you to get business, and it's going to be really hard to make it. And also, a lot of people in Uruguay rely on their family, or they rely on, this house that was passed down through generations, or this land was passed down through generations, and so maybe they're not paying rent, or they just know ways to live in the country with less money, and we just don't have that information as foreigners, as expats or immigrants. And so if you come down there expecting to start a business without understanding the culture, without knowing the language, or you expect to get a job and survive on that income, it's going to be really hard, if not impossible. People do it, but it's very rare. And even many Uruguayans, my friends, have more than one job because it's just really hard to make it on a local income in the country. Uruguay is not a cheap country. It's one of the more expensive countries in Latin America. The reason for that is it's very stable. It's very safe. Like, there's reasons that you pay more to live there, but even still, if you're expecting to survive on a local income, it's going to be really difficult, and a lot of people don't make it. And in my time there, a lot of people moved there and ended up making GoFundMes in order to get out of the country because they completely ran out of money. So I think that people need to be very prepared financially, or have a really strict budget and know that they can live on that, and really do a lot of research because it's not easy. The other issue that people face, as I kind of briefly mentioned it, is lack of language. It's really hard to completely fluently master a language. I mean, it could just be that I'm not good at languages, which is possible, but I understand Spanish basically fluently, and I can speak well enough, but being able to convey your emotions and being able to really connect with people and really speak their language is not easy. And I have a friend who, she's completely fluent in Spanish, and one thing that she says is, like, when you go to church or when you pray or you do something like that, she said, my heart language is English. And that really resonated with me because it's true. Like, the language that I pray in, the language that I think in, the language that I just genuinely connect with people easily in is English. And it's hard to do that 100% in another language. Now, I have friends that don't speak English, and they're lovely people, but if I'm really going through something, or I'm having a hard time, or I'm struggling, I want to speak in English. And so I think people get fatigue over that, like just an internal fatigue over connecting with people in a language that isn't their own, and realizing like, I may have to do this forever. And just if they have zero language skills, just getting through the day, doing normal tasks and living your life in another language can really wear people out. So people get tired of that, and that's something that you have to be prepared for, and you have to know, I am moving to a country and I'm going to live my life in a foreign language. Am I okay with that? So I think that's another thing that kind of trips people up. Not understanding how things work. I know I did a video of you don't know what you don't know, and you don't even know that you need to know it, but not understanding how to buy a car, or how to rent a house, or how to order something online, or how to open a bank account, or how to do an online transfer and that from that new local bank account, or just the basic things that we take for granted. Not understanding how to do that is really difficult for people, and they get tired of it. So not understanding that, not understanding cultural expectations or cultural norms is also something that trips people up. And then of course, a person's inability to adapt to another country. I think a lot of people come thinking that they will be who they were in their last country or in their native country, that they'll be that same person in a foreign country, and it's impossible. We have to adapt, we have to change, we have to understand things from a new cultural perspective or cultural lens. I don't remember the exact example, but I was in church probably the first year that I lived in Uruguay, and I was starting to understand the language, and I was listening to some of their examples, and the examples that they used to relate to people just kind of blew my mind, because I was like, wow, that is not something I would ever hear in the US of an example or a story. So just understanding that there are different cultural norms and expectations and understandings, and jokes are different, they follow a different culture, and just being able to adapt to that, it takes effort. And if you don't adapt, or you fail to adapt in those areas, you're not going to ever feel comfortable or ever truly take your new country on as something that is yours and something that you can live in and that you're okay with. So you have to be willing to change and to adapt and to move in different ways and to experience life in different ways. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard, and you're not going to end up enjoying it. You're not going to like it. And there's going to be things that you never change, because there's things about me, I'm North American. Like when somebody tells me, oh, es imposible, I'm like, is it though? Is it really impossible? We North Americans don't like that word. And I appreciate that about myself, and I want my kids to also not listen to the word impossible, because maybe it's hard, but it's not impossible most of the time. And as a North American, we are okay hearing that word and saying, but watch me. And that is very North American. We're innovative, and we don't really like to take no for an answer. And in other cultures, that's not the case. But there are ways that we can retain our normal culture, but we also have to change in some ways. And some people are just unwilling to do that, or they're just too inflexible to do that, and they're going to have a really hard time. People that move thinking that the grass is greener. In some ways, it is definitely greener, but it's not greener in all ways. You're going to miss things of your native country. You're going to miss just understanding things and communicating easily, and it's just not always greener. There are things that are, and there's things that aren't. And so you have to be willing to realize that life is not always going to be perfect in your new place, and there's things that are going to just irritate the absolute crap out of you in your new country. And you have to either accept them or reject them and leave, because why live in a new place and just complain the whole time? And many people do that. And I know it's common, and expat groups are like, well, if you don't like it, leave it. I don't think that that's true, because there's things everywhere that we don't like, and we should be able to express ourselves, or we should be allowed to say, I don't like this and I wish that it were different. But at the same time, if all you do is complain and wish that things were the way that they were in your native country, you're probably not going to make it for very long. Winters suck in Uruguay. They just suck. They're long, and they're cold, and they're humid, and houses aren't meant for all of that. You're cold inside. It's colder inside than it is outside. Generally your windows are going to have water because it's so humid inside of the houses. They just weren't built for the humidity and the cold. And you can barely get them warm. Like you have to try really hard to keep your house warm. And if you're going to use electricity to keep it warm, it's super expensive. You're going to regret that you did that. It's better to be cold. So winters suck. I don't like winter anywhere, but they just genuinely suck in Uruguay, and you should know that. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is probably going to upset people, especially if you're Uruguayan and you ever come across this, and I apologize in advance, but it's the truth. Being a foreigner makes you a target. People want your money. They think that you're coming from a place where money grows on trees and they want to take some of yours. And whether it's overcharging you or suing you or just generally taking advantage of you, they are going to try. And to be honest, you're probably going to fall for it once or twice. It's almost impossible to avoid. I hardly know any North American immigrants that haven't been sued or had some sort of legal problem. So you should just expect it. Try to avoid it, but it's really hard to avoid because Uruguayans know the laws. They know that you're at a disadvantage being a foreigner, regardless of if you speak Spanish or not, you're at a disadvantage, and they want to take something from you. And that's obviously not everybody, but the bad people are going to find you. I don't know how, but they will. They will find you and they will try to take advantage of you. So at least the first few years that you live there, you have to be on guard and expect that somebody wants to screw you over, because they do. It's a small country, and for whatever reason, like, these people work together. They will find you when you come in the country and they will connect you with their realtor. They'll connect you with their like yard person or their maid or their whatever the case may be. They will connect you and they will get a kickback from it, or they will send someone in to sue you. Maybe one day I will share a bunch of lawsuits that have happened, but in general, I think that those are the things that you should be aware of. I still think that for me, moving to Uruguay was one of the better decisions that I made in my life. Absolutely had great experiences there. It was amazing for my kids. I love the country. I have some of the best friends in my life that are Uruguayan, but I think we have to be realistic and know that it's not perfect and there are difficulties that foreigners face, and you should be aware of it if you're going to move there, and know that maybe some bad things will happen, but if you're able to take precautions, maybe you can avoid losing money, avoid a lot of stress, and avoid a lot of frustration. So those are some of the reasons why people don't make it in Uruguay, and potentially it's relevant for other countries. If you have lived in Uruguay or you've lived in another country, you've been an expat or an immigrant, and any of these things have been true for you, let me know. I'd love to hear stories about it.